I have the amazing privilege today of sitting down with Mona Gregg. And Mona is one of the original 7, if you have heard us talking about the original 7 that were part of a Bible study that was the beginning of Sunrise. Mona, thank you so much for welcoming me into your home today.
It's my pleasure.
It is so fun to finally be able to sit down with you. You got to be with us at the 50th celebration a couple of weeks ago.
That was beautiful.
What was that like for you to be in that room with about 750 people and to think about what has happened over 50 years? How was that for you?
That was heart-rending. It was. To see how that church has grown and all that, as I remember, Pastor Gene brought to that church. I know there have been other ministers too, and they've been great, but Pastor Gene would have been so thrilled.
So take me back, if you can, to before 1974. So the first meeting in the Fair Oaks Grange was in early 1974.
Right.
But what was this Bible study that was happening that led up to that?
Well, what led up to it was one day a young, tall, thin man knocked on my door, and he said he was taking a survey, and would I be interested in helping to start up a new church. And I had been wanting a church home.
Okay.
So he told me, as I remember it, this home was going to be over. I remember the name of the guy whose home it was. His name was Bill.
Okay.
And so we went there for the first Bible study, and which at that point was not a Bible study, was to get acquainted with.
Okay. So you weren't necessarily studying the Bible yet.
Yeah.
But it was, we're going to get this group of people together in the area.
Right.
And
Start up. And I can remember talking to Pastor Gene, and we were all kind of just laughing because who was going to play the piano? Who could sing? You know, all that kind of thing. And it's almost like we were setting up a church right then.
Right then. Wow.
Yeah.
So was that Pastor Gene that knocked on your door?
No.
No, so he wasn't around yet.
It was I won't forget him because he died I had heard he was a young man.
Okay.
And he was tall and very slender. And so I was so surprised when I heard he had passed, because someone so young, so slender.
So we will give a bonus to whoever out there can identify who the tall, young, slender man was that knocked on Mona's door.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were their intention was to plant a church.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then, so how long, if you remember, from when the Bible study and the group kind of started until you actually met over in the Grange Hall?
Well, I would have to say I felt maybe like a year.
Okay, so it was a little while.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there was that first Sunday in the Grange Hall.
Right.
What was that like?
Well, see, I don't remember. It was wonderful that we were all finally going to be in a church, but I've been trying to remember what month that was in, and it must have been close to Christmas.
Yeah, if I remember right, one of the fun things I've been doing lately is looking through all the past records of the church, and the closest thing I could find that there was a January meeting that got everybody together in the Grange Hall. I think they had maybe 22 people that came to a service or
Right.
went to Sunday school that day.
Yeah.
So that, boy, now if that's 50 some years ago, you must have had young kids.
Yeah. I had a young son
Yeah.
who stole the Christmas program away from the minister. They had a manger scene set up on the platform, and then Mark and some other little kids were sitting up there too. And they were telling the story about Jesus and Mary, or not Jesus, Joseph and Mary could find no place in the inn.
Uh-huh.
And Mark jumped up and said, "Oh, there's no place for them to stay." And we couldn't get him to hush. And he kept on. So anyway, the church service got interrupted, and we all had a good laugh.
Had a good laugh. This sounds like the best Christmas pageant ever. By the way, you all, Mark is about 10 feet behind the camera right now,
Yeah.
just wincing at these stories. But so you had a lot of younger families then in that time, right?
They were basically young. There were a couple of older people.
Mm-hmm.
I know can never pronounce his name correctly, but the Eliza,
Okay.
and he was the minister of music,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and so to me he was older. Who knows how
Right.
old he was? But I was 42.
Yeah. So you all, I mean, this Bible study becomes a church. You're meeting in the Grange. You've called Gene Kern,
Right.
who comes with obviously Eleanor and Murray and Kent and Janelle.
Right.
And they're young children at the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
right?
In
So
fact,
they're in the same age range you all are.
Yeah, and Cindy babysat for the Kern's
So
children.
we might be able to get some stories from Cindy one of these days. Who knows? Okay, so yeah, so how is that? You're raising your children at the same time with the senior pastor and his family. What was it like with Gene and Eleanor back then? I mean, did you feel like you were all doing this together, the church?
I'd have to say no.
Okay.
I kind of had them separate
Okay, yeah.
from.
Was it like, that's the pastor?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So
yeah.
so there's something
There was
that's
a
maybe
respect there, too.
right. That's a little different than these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was having this conversation with someone the other day about at that time, I think in the community a pastor was much more revered, respected
we called
within
him,
the community. And you'd go to him for all kinds of advice, not
exactly.
just spiritual advice.
And he was always there.
Yeah.
He really was a marvelous pastor.
Yeah.
And Eleanor was a great.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Before we started recording here today, we were telling some stories about over at the Grange Hall, or even when you were on the campus there at Sunrise, but that Pastor Gene would have to go out and tell the guys that were waiting to come in they had to put out their cigarettes and come on into the church service, right?
Because they all were smoking. It wasn't just my husband who was smoking. It seemed like they all were.
So it was just a kind of a normal thing. And,
Right, yeah.
Today let me tell you,
you would be appalled.
as executive pastor, if someone is smoking on campus, I am told about that within seconds.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it's just that's happening out there. That's great. Do you remember much about when they were getting ready to move on to the new campus? Because I saw pictures of a dedication service and
Right.
groundbreaking
Yeah.
and different things like
And that was all exciting, yeah. And my husband was out there helping to direct traffic.
Okay.
And that's when he told Pastor Gene there were no Christians in the parking lot.
They gain their salvation after they get out of the car.
Exactly. Gene had his job to do once they got in.
Well, and like Mark was saying before, I mean, you had this crew of people that would go out and mark the parking spots every
Right.
week
Yeah.
on the dirt, right, with the chalk lines.
Exactly.
And, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So that part, see, Mark remembers from his dad more than,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And then so they built a worship center, which we know now to be the youth building,
Right,
Which
yeah.
is fantastic. For when I started here as youth pastor, that was my building. I got
Okay,
to
yes.
oversee that building, but that was the worship center, and I think there was maybe a little office off to the side there for the
There
church
must
office.
have been, yes, because that other building that is the offices now was
Wasn't
not
there,
there.
right.
Yeah.
Now, things tended to grow pretty quickly.
They did.
If you gave me some documents here that you have a folder full of all kinds of neat things here, but I saw in here a roll of numbers, and it looked like by a year into it, there were a lot of people coming to church.
Right, yes, there were.
Did you feel like you were a part of something that was just exciting and growing? And if you,
You know, I would, I'd have to say no. Though it was
I love it.
wonderful, but it was growing at such a good pace.
yeah,
And now the Eastmans,
yeah, oh yeah,
they played a big part
oh interesting.
in,
Dennis and Betty,
yeah,
yeah, good people,
right from the get-go.
yeah.
And another two people that I want to mention is Dale and Lorraine Svensson. Do you remember them?
I see his name on the Sunrise Reflections right
Yeah.
here. This is February 1st, 1976. And he was the head usher at
Right,
that time,
yeah.
right? And I think he was an elder too.
I'm sure he was, yeah.
Yeah, we were very sad. It was a few years back when he passed away, probably 4 or 5 years ago. But
Yeah.
tell me more about the Svensons.
About who?
Dale and what was his wife's name?
Svensson.
Swenson, yeah.
In fact, I sit next to his brother
Yep.
in church
And
now.
Doug, I just saw him this week. He volunteers. He shows up at the church early on any day of the week.
Right.
And is out there
He's
trimming hedges
Right,
and cleaning up leaves and making our whole facility look
yes,
great.
yeah. So he's quite faithful. Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. There's so many. I have way too many questions. So what were some of the things, the ways that people were able to be involved at the church?
Well, there were, they could be Sunday school teachers. They could be watching the small children.
Yep.
And then there was the Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
And, there were many areas to fill.
I think there was plenty of work to be done. When I saw that they had built the building, they did it with volunteer labor. A lot of it was built
Right.
with volunteer labor and self-contracted by the church.
Yep, exactly. And my husband was one of them that
Was doing that work.
we did some of that
Yeah.
work, not most of it, but did some of it. And Cindy was taught first as just as an assistant to a Sunday school teacher.
Yeah.
And then she also did for the Vacation Bible School. So my children, frankly, did more than I did. I did nothing. I sent my children and my husband. They were the workers.
They were the workers. It's interesting to me. I one of the questions I've asked a lot of people as I've been interviewing them has to do with, what do you see as some of the key things that are part of the personality of Sunrise or the culture of Sunrise, and one of those is it's a culture of volunteers.
Yeah.
This church has always depended upon volunteers. And this morning I was out. We're recording this on a Wednesday. I pull into the parking lot and I have a group of about 12 guys that are huddled in a circle. I think they had just prayed and they're getting ready to go out and work all around our facility.
That's marvelous. That really is. Yeah.
And
Sunrise is also a very friendly church.
Would you use the word welcoming? I would.
Welcoming, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
they all do, but everything but drag you in with their warmth. They.
Well, I feel like some of that was started by the Kerns in just especially Jean's personality of
exactly. Yep.
welcoming people in, loving them unconditionally,
and he did.
So what's that like? In a lot of the research I've been doing over the last couple of months to learn about Sunrise back in the day,
right?
I feel like I was telling you all earlier. I feel like I've gotten into Gene's head a little bit, trying to understand him. But I still see this very formal German Baptist that always wore a suit.
Yeah, always. Always.
But very warm and loving to people,
definitely,
right? People are described as gentle.
And we all dressed like, how we dress now. It doesn't make any difference, but it did in the day.
It did in the day.
Yeah.
I heard a rumor about Gene one time that he told someone said, well, I don't want to wear a suit. And he said to the young man, well, that's fine, but you won't be in the church directory.
Oh, really? So
I'm going to try to get that person to interview that person too, right? In the church directory, you all looked really good.
That's right.
Oh, wow. So, any other fun stories about being a part of Sunrise over the years?
I cannot think of any.
Yeah. Well,
I remember once, and it's not funny, but I was scared going back many years ago. I learned how to make Christmas ornaments, and out of used Christmas cards. So I was invited by the pastor, by Eleanor, to go to the Baptist church in Elk Grove.
Oh, yeah?
And demonstrate this technique. And we were having a dinner before. Well, I could barely enjoy the dinner because I was so nervous.
Oh,
and I didn't like getting up in front of people and having to say anything or do anything, but now I've got to tell how to make these ornaments. I was so glad when the evening was over, and they gave me a check for $20. I think it was $20, and it might have been $10. I don't know, but I immediately turned it over to Eleanor and said, "This is yours." I was happy the evening was over.
Well, tell me about Eleanor. What do you know? What are some of your good memories of Eleanor and things that stand out about her? I have some fun stories about Eleanor too.
Okay, I am trying to. I don't have any.
That's all right.
except that she was, and she still is, a wonderful person.
And
You felt the warmth from her.
and that's really what I was looking for in that question. So between Jean and Eleanor,
Right.
you had two people.
Oh, they were just such a loving couple. Even, of course, in those days, the way people dressed, that was just a kind of a normal thing.
Right.
So it wasn't a big deal for any of us. And I don't think, things must have been changing then, even gradually, since you mentioned that young man. Couldn't be in the directory if he wasn't dressed properly.
Well, we tend to blame Rich Sherman for some of that.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, I'm told that back in the day, that even in the office, that all the gals in the office were to wear a skirt
Right,
or a dress, and that the men were always in a tie, and that they could dress down on Fridays. And that meant the gals could wear slacks, and the guys could maybe wear jeans, but that was only on Fridays.
Only on Friday, yeah.
Wow.
So it's interesting how the times have changed.
Well, times have changed. I'm looking through an old proposed budget for 1976, and it shows the pastor's salary is $3,300.
He wouldn't go very far today.
Right?
No.
Oh boy! I mean, just some interesting things, and I think all of the pastors' salaries that year, the total number. Actually, a couple of years later, I found that it was like $30,000 for a whole year for the entire staff. I think now we're at about 1.2 million, but
which that's wonderful.
Yeah. What was it like to just see the church grow and develop over the years? I mean, buildings were added and programs.
I've since I've talked with you about these things, I've tried to remember, and for my own, and I'm speaking for my own self, I was not thinking about the church as a whole, as it growing and that type of thing. I went, and I enjoyed the services, and it's looking back that is a real blessing to see how that church has developed.
Would you say that it helped you raise your kids?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it still does.
Yeah.
And it still is, yeah.
One of the things that was in this folder you gave me this morning is a circular that it looks like Jean or the church put out, but it was encouraging people to write their legislators about a bill before the House of Representatives or to the Senate, and that had to do with taking parental rights away in how they raise their kids, and so anyway. But I see names like Alan Cranston on here, and Gerald Ford, president, and things like that. But the church was involved in the families.
Oh,
lives,
definitely,
right?
definitely,
helping them raise their kids.
They certainly were involved in mine, and that is what I wanted.
Yeah.
When that young man knocked on my door, that was a wonderful thing, because I wanted a church home for my family.
Well, I have to tell you, I really appreciate hearing some of this, because as a pastor, sometimes our temptations are to want to see numerical growth. You can't help but feel sometimes that's your measure of success, which it really isn't. But to hear that a wife and a parent is wanting a place where they can help raise their family and grow closer to the Lord. The numbers don't matter, and you don't really pay attention to that. You're just part of something that
Right.
God's doing, right?
Yeah. So Sunrise has meant a great deal to me personally.
Well, I'm so glad you're still around here to tell
Well,
us
I
these
am too.
stories. This is great. We found, I was able to find Mona's original Sunrise Baptist Church membership and testimony form that she got to fill out to become a member at Sunrise, and that's fun. We actually save all of these, so that was
I was happy to see that. Too.
that was fun to be able to read that and just see. Anything else that you think we should know?
I cannot think of anything.
Yeah. This has been delightful.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it so much, and my friends that watch along, you'll probably hear there'll be a number of them that will come back and start telling their stories as well. But thank you so much for
You're more than welcome.
allowing me into your home and being a part of Sunrise and raising your kids up in the Lord, and it's neat to see what God's doing,
Yeah,
still doing.
so.
And I'm glad I didn't have to wear a suit today.
Nor me either.
Hey, thank you all for joining us too. Look forward to seeing you next time.